Hunga Volcano was previously two small islands, one Hunga Tonga, Hunga Hapai, and these two islands are just the tips of a very large volcano that is underneath the ocean waves. We know from the geological studies, when we look at the deeper history of this big volcano, that this big central volcano, the big bowl on the top of the volcano, produces eruptions about once every millennia. So once every 1,000 years or so, it produces these very large eruptions. And that is when enough magma has risen in and has stored into the volcano. And that's what happened a few days ago on the 15th of January, is the stored magma in the volcano erupted out of the big central crater rather than the small eruptions at the side. And this big eruption happened through seawater, and you think that water might stop the activity, but the seawater in this case was not deep enough to stop the activity. And instead, what happened when the volcano began to erupt into the shallow seawater, all of that magma interacted with the shallow seawater, and we had a very, very accelerated explosion. So when the magma and the water come together, the water suddenly turns into steam. It just expands into steam. And when it does that, the water from a liquid to steam is a change in volume. It expands by 70 times. So basically, the eruption started, it was explosive. Then all of that seawater got into the magma and in through the magma that was breaking apart in the first explosion. And when it did that, it really amplified the explosion and it became bigger and wider. That eruption lasted only probably around 10 minutes, but it actually blasted ash material all the way up to more than 30 kilometers high in the air. It also created a cloud of ash and gas that spread out sideways. And within less than half an hour of the start of the eruption, that big cloud had spread out across Tongatapu and had covered an area of around 350 kilometers, which is incredibly powerful. So the power of that explosion was very unusual. It was one of the most powerful explosions we've seen in the Southwest Pacific throughout modern history. There are two main scenarios for future activity. One is that settled down and we won't see much more from it. The other is that the magma has risen into the magma will rise into the volcano to replace the magma that was erupted away, and then we will continue to have a series of eruptions. It's commonly asked whether or not the eruptions of one volcano along a chain of volcanoes, for example, will affect other volcanoes on that chain. Well, what we can say is almost certainly not. So each volcano behaves with its own mechanism, but they generally have their own plumbing system. So they have their own source of magma that comes from deep in the earth and their own storage system for that magma. And so they all sort of also operate under their own cycle. So the Hunga volcano has this cycle of once every 1,000 years, it has a large eruption, and then in between it has a series of smaller ones. And so if you move to another volcano, it might have a faster or slower type of process operating it, but they do operate independently of one another.